A dramatic rise in campus hate crime hoaxes blurs the line between victims and victimizers. And that suits the cynical aims of progressive faculty just fine. Next on Campus Roundup. Hi, I'm Dr. Duke, and this is Campus Roundup, a partnership between the College Fix and Freedom Project Media. Our top story this week focuses on the growing epidemic of campus hate crime hoaxes. For more on that, I want to welcome Amanda Tidwell, an economics student at The Ohio State University and a journalist for the College Fix. Amanda, you've written a great article, Roundup, the year in review, 17 campus hate crimes that turned out to be hoaxes in 2017. Amanda, tell us a little bit about what made you interested in this story, and gave you the idea to do it, and was it a compelling story as you were putting it together?
Yeah, absolutely. So basically here at the College Fix, what we do is we round up, hoax stories throughout the year. And then by the end that the year wraps up, we kind of go in and review all of these hoaxes and do a compilation of all of these stories and kind of a short summary of them. And I have to say that it was quite surprising that we found 17 just alone on our site. And now that's just not limited to our site. There are lots of other sites that do this as well. And a lot of university stories that were not even in our compilation, but I was pretty surprised. And not only that, but I saw a lot of hoaxes come from high school as well. So that's a trend that we're seeing now too.
I noticed that. I mean, this is not just, we know a lot about the university campus hoax situation. Why do you think more hoaxes are happening generally? And specifically, why is this bleeding down now to high schools?
Sure, absolutely. So like you said, we all know that, higher education and, colleges typically are pretty liberal. But I think that we also don't think that, the public education system isn't liberal as well, where, when I was growing up in the public school system, I surely experienced a lot of, liberal teachers and didn't really realize it until I was in college that, they were pushing, a leftist agenda. And so I think it's just becoming more apparent, and especially with the election of Donald Trump, they feel probably more to combat hate and teach, these young children that that he is not a good president.
Well, one of the things that's always blown me away a little bit is it seems like we've come so far along racial and these kinds of inclusive lines that the campus left, the academic left, has actually had to invent microaggressions. I mean, there aren't enough macroaggressions. There aren't enough of these kind of big hate incidences going on college campuses anymore, or high school campuses as well. And so the university has kind of invited all of these micro ways to offend people, and yet you still find these kids who are making up these grand narratives, right? It's, in a way, you could kind of make the argument, couldn't you, Amanda, that some of these hoaxes, many of these hoaxes, are going for the big hit, right? Nooses hanging, white sheets, the Ku Klux Klan, all of that stuff. It's almost as if there's not enough real racism on hatred in college campuses. And so it kind of has to be manufactured to keep stoking the fire. Is that a fair statement?
Absolutely. And see, you kind of ask the question, well, why don't we see this on the right? We don't have to make it up. UC Berkeley is burning. Baltimore was burnt to the ground. So, when we come from a conservative perspective, these things are actually happening. And like you said, and, it was kind of the narrative that with Donald Trump as president, then we would see all hate crimes on campuses. And the fact of the matter is that we simply were not. And so we had, like you said, that they have to manufacture these stories in order to, it reinforced their false narrative, and a lot of the times these crimes these hoaxes are perpetrated by people by African Americans or by Muslims, and so that's kind of surprising as well.
Well, that's exactly right. Every story you reported on comes from the left, right? Progressive kids of different races and religions coming together to falsify these claims to try to get attention. And that's it. You said, why don't we see this from Republican or conservative or Christian kids? And I think one of the main reasons is that the university doesn't take them all that seriously. If you're a Caucasian kid that claims that your African American studies professor is kind of bullying you on the basis of your race, no one's going to take you that seriously. But for these liberal kids, the university pretty much grinds to a halt. One of the things that blew me away is how dramatically the universities responded to these hoaxes. Everything was shut down. You get these huge statements of inclusivity, these grand condemnations. But after the hoaxes were proven to be hoaxes, nothing happens. The students aren't punished. There's not much that happened. One of the articles you wrote about I believe it was a University of Kansas hate crime hoax. The police decided it was not in the best interests of the community to punish the hoaxer. And so when you have a situation, Amanda, where these kinds of liberal hoaxes generate all of this attention, generate change, generate protest, but conservative protests generate next to nothing, are we at the least bit surprised that you're seeing more of it?
Not really. And like you said, a lot of times the hoaxers are protected. And I think that should be rule number one, is that these hoaxers should be publicly named. There's no legitimate reason to protect their identities. They're not going to be, no one's going to attack them or go after them because they made something up. But I think that, harsher punishment for these people that are lying to the police and to the university is absolutely necessary, because if there's no punishment, then why it's not going to stop.
And so to protect progressive kids from the tiniest, the subatomic microaggression, we're willing to accuse entire genders and entire races, entire campuses of really gross hate crimes. And when they're proven to be false, we really do nothing to rectify the falsity of this. It really is an unfair system that unduly puts pressure on certain kind of kids at the expense of others.
Absolutely.
Let me ask you, was there, of all those 17 stories, one more goofy than the next, was there one that stands out in your mind as particularly egregious or as particularly shocking in the way that it went down?
Yeah, so I think the one from the San Diego University story, we reported it in January. It occurred in November after Donald Trump was elected as president, and she accused that two men attacked her and took her hijab off and stole her car. And as it turned out, she forgot where her car had parked, and nobody attacked her. So I think that, that is such, especially that was after President Trump announced the travel ban as well. So tensions were extremely high. And that's just such a huge thing to make up in order to, like we said, reinforce this narrative that these hate crimes are rising on campus, and she wasn't punished for it as well. So, kind of what's the incentive for people to stop lying on campus? There is none whatsoever.
Well, and if I recall correctly from your story, that particular individual, after it was proven that she had faked this, she said that she, rather than apologize, she declined to prosecute or push charges, right? After it was proven that her story was a hoax, she, rather than apologize, simply said, well, I won't prosecute now. It was really remarkable when you think about it. Amanda Tidwell, student at the Ohio State University of Economics, journalist for the College Fix, thank you for your time, and OH.
I.O. Thank you so much.
It's time for Talking Campus, our weekly discussion forum with members of the College Fix editorial team. Today I'm joined by College Fix editor Jennifer Kabbany for a conversation about the rise of fake hate crimes on college campuses. Jennifer, it seems that almost all of these high-profile campus hate crimes turn out to be hoaxes perpetrated by students seeking attention for their political causes. How do you explain the rise in such hoaxes?
Well, I think what's going on here is when a hoax gets perpetrated on campus, unfortunately, administrators completely admit culpability. It's our fault. This is a racist campus. We're oppressive. Let us implement these programs. Let us hire more faculty of color. Let us give you all this money. They're rewarded. So why not do it? Because there's no consequences.
Yeah, across the board, there is no consequences. In looking at all of these fake hate crimes that have been documented by the College Fix, among other places, the one trend that they all have in common is that the community declines to punish the student at this time. It's not in the best interest of our campus to punish these hoaxers. And yet, these are really serious accusations. And every now and then, they do accuse kids until these are proven fake. They do come down hard on a fraternity, or they'll come down hard on a particular individual or a particular teacher. And there's no apology even when this is said and done. And you're right, why not do them if this is what you can get away with and advance your political cause?
Yeah. And unfortunately, then every time I read a new story of a supposed hate crime, I kind of cringe because I'm like, is this going to turn out to be a hoax? Because they so often do. Over the last 4 or 5 years, we've documented dozens and dozens of cases, and it becomes the situation of the boy who cried wolf. So now we don't know, is this real or it's false? So often it's false, and it does harm to those real hate crimes that do deserve to be taken seriously.
Yeah, I think that has to be really reiterated, that what you're doing is you're making it much, much harder, at least off campus. I mean, you just, I think, wonderfully pointed out that on campus it doesn't matter. the fake hate crime actually furthers a campus agenda, right? Because even if the hate crime turns out to be fake, all these revisions are put in place, all of these changes are granted, concessions made. But off campus, as people are watching, as donors are watching, as moms and dads who thinking about sending their kids to their colleges are watching, they recognize that this is a very dangerous precedent that makes it harder for actual hate crimes to be taken seriously.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I tend to see two kinds of hate crimes. The one is perpetrated by a student of color. They're just trying to prove a point. They want to advance their agenda, unfortunately doing it the wrong way. But then the other is they just see racism in every corner. We had a situation back in Vanderbilt where a blind student was walking their dog and they couldn't find a trash can, and they left their bag of poop on the doorstep. Unfortunately, it was the Black Cultural Center's doorstep, but it wasn't malicious. Like I said, it was a blind student. But when they found the dog poop, they immediately thought racism. Or the time they found what they thought was a noose at the University of Delaware, it just turned out to be some old decorations from hanging lanterns. So, both of those we see a lot, and both of them are unfortunate. And I think we should investigate what's going on before we jump to conclusions, because by and large, students, they don't want to be racist. They want to be loving and accepting of everybody. And so, unfortunately, we got to take this seriously, and administrators have got to stop jumping to conclusions right away and say, let's get all the facts before we decide what we're dealing with here.
Well, and I've taught at 7 different universities over my career, and I think the university faculty are much more culpable and responsible for this than the students are. Like you said, there are a variety of reasons: attention-seeking, praise from professors. Even when these kids make up hoaxes, their own professors won't condemn them for it. And so I think the university faculty has a big, big price to pay for all of this, because they're creating a circumstance where we see racism behind every corner. We refuse to acknowledge on college campuses that we have more or less obliterated hate crimes on campus. I mentioned in a previous segment that the very invention of microaggressions is a compensation for the fact that there aren't enough macroaggressions to justify all of these identity studies programs.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, they're just digging in deeper and deeper with their progressive agenda. The professors, they encourage students, tell them there's racism everywhere. And then when the students don't see it, they create it on their own. It's a very bad recipe.
Right. And, I don't know what the answer to this is, because, again, there is no institutional pressure on the inside to change this from within. The school administrators would rather jump the gun and blame white culture, white supremacy, racism, because there's no consequence for doing that. And very often, if these administrators take their time investigating this and refuse to comment, then the pressures double down by progressive elements on campus, calling them unresponsive. We saw the University of Missouri system president have to resign because he didn't investigate as quickly as the campus agitators would have liked.
Yeah. Ultimately, we do need to start holding campus presidents more accountable, boards of directors and trustees. We got to say, hey, if we put the pressure on the top dog, on where the buck stops, then maybe that'll trickle down. I think that's the only way we're going to change this particular issue, because, the professors have a vested interest in these campus hate crimes. Seeing them get their agenda passed, because inevitably it's more money for multicultural programs. It's more money directed toward affirmative action programs. It helps support and grow their social progressive causes. And unfortunately, that's built on a lie. Most often we're finding with all of these cases.
Jennifer Kabbany, editor of The College Fix, thanks so much for your time today. As The College Fix has carefully documented, there is an alarming rise in fake campus hate crime reports. More and more pressured minority students feel compelled to report hate incidents that never happened. Many of these hate crimes hoaxes are the result of university faculty and administrators who condition students to treat simple differences between cultures and personalities as willful oppression. So what then is the fix? First, faculty and administrators must stop inventing microaggressions out of thin air, convincing students that wearing a costume or celebrating another culture's holidays or asking someone what part of the world they are from or even daring to defend free speech are the equivalent of hate and violence. By driving impressionable students to overreact to such trivial incidents, campus faculty and administrators become blind guides, teaching students to strain out a gnat while swallowing a camel. Such needless incitement creates a campus gotcha culture, where taking offense becomes nothing more than a high-stakes game of Where's Waldo. First prize goes to the student most able to cite imaginary needles in non-existent haystacks. And removing Orwellian bias response teams, censorship posses in search of an outrage, would be a very good first step in bringing ideological sobriety back to campus relations. Secondly, faculty and administrators must teach students to see people as individuals, not just as cogs in the machinery of race, class, gender, and sexuality studies. In convincing generations of students that only men can be sexist, only Caucasians can be racist, and only the rich can be greedy, they have created a campus landscape where fake hate crimes against certain out-of-favor groups aren't crimes at all, but rather social justice exercises in speaking truth to power. For the American left, which is to say academia in general, the more outlandish the hate crime hoax, the more proof of the underlying oppression being lied about in the first place. Look, every individual of any race, creed, and culture is obviously capable of hate on the grounds of race, class, or gender, and is therefore capable of engaging in hate crimes, not just reporting them. To deny this on the paternalistic grounds of social justice theorizing is to deny individuals from minority communities the basic human right to choose their own beliefs, responses, and even prejudices. But viewed solely through the prism of left-wing social justice tribalism, hate crimes are a one-way street and must be treated as true, or at least as indicative of broader truths, despite the lack of evidence, intent, or truth. And if our universities and colleges are no longer places that prioritize evidence, intent, and truth, then what necessary purpose do they serve at all? And that's the final fix. I'm Dr. Duke. We'll see you next time on Campus Roundup. For more videos and original articles, visit thecollegefix.com. And don't forget to like The College Fix on Facebook and follow on Twitter to receive your daily dose of right-minded news and commentary from across the nation.